They didn't describe what I was going to do. They just came out with this little bikini, and I thought, oh my God, I am in trouble. The Ohio Players were known for their funky music, but strange rumors followed them for years. Fans wondered if there was a dark secret behind their success. Could it be true that something awful happened during their rise to fame? Now, after 39 years, a member of the band has finally spoken up. What did they reveal? Let's find out. The Ohio Players really ushered in a whole host of other artists, mentored them, and brought them into the forum, and that's part of what makes Dayton, Ohio, so unique. The Ohio Players started as a group of young, passionate musicians who called themselves the Ohio Untouchables. They were led by Robert Ward, a skilled blues guitarist from Georgia, and included talented players like Marshall Jones, Clarence Satchel, and Pee Wee Middlebrooks. My dad used to take us to the clubs the Ohio Untouchables were playing. Hey man, that stuff was off the chain. Their music was pure, soulful, and full of energy. People would travel far just to hear them play. But these cats they were real players. We were trying to be like them, you know. We wanted to be players, you know. But we ain't players yet, you know. So we had to work on our skill. The band began to make a name for itself in the early 1960s, recording songs and even playing backup for stars like Wilson Pickett. But their leader, Robert Ward, became unreliable. He sometimes walked off the stage in the middle of performances, leaving the rest of the band to figure things out. One day, after a fight between Ward and bassist Marshall Jones, the band split up. The remaining members decided they would never be side musicians again. They replaced Ward with a talented young guitarist named Leroy Sugarfoot Bonner, who gave the group a fresh start. Sugarfoot, the oldest of 14 kids, had never gone to high school, but he taught himself to play guitar. His love for blues and jazz helped shape the band's new style. The group wanted to create something different. They combined R&B with a flashy, exciting sound. They practiced every day and played constantly. Music wasn't just a job for them, it was their life. By 1967, the band had a new vibe and a new name, the Ohio Players. The name fit perfectly. They were smooth, stylish, and full of charisma. Their charm attracted fans everywhere. By 1968, they released their first major album, Observations in Time, with Capitol Records. The Ohio Players really ushered in a whole host of other artists, mentored them, and brought them into the forum, and that's part of what makes Dayton, Ohio, so unique. But the album didn't sell well, and the record label dropped them. In the early days, the band struggled, but in the 1970s, they finally found their sound. It all started in 1970 when they brought in a teenage prodigy named Juni Morrison. He helped steer the group into the world of funk, a genre that was taking over the music scene. With Juni on board, the band's music changed. They started playing harder and more aggressive funk that felt just right. It was a new sound, and it worked. In 1971, they signed with Westbound Records, a label that also worked with George Clinton. Their first single, Pain, became a huge hit, and it changed their career forever. The song was full of raw emotion, and the powerful horns and vocals made it unforgettable. The lyrics, Pain is in my heart, really connected with listeners, and it became their first top 40 hit. But it wasn't just the music that grabbed attention. The album cover for Pain featured a bold image of a woman with a shaved head, which was unheard of at the time. The model, Pat Evans, became an icon. She was not just a passive image, but a strong, independent figure. Her look stood out, and the album sold because of it. They didn't describe what I was going to do. They just came out with this little bikini, and I thought, oh my God, I am in trouble. People couldn't stop talking about the boldness of it. It was funky, it was stylish, and it was something no one had seen before. And we had this funkiness, we had this, pain. Boom. The only one. Bomo. Bo Bane. You know? Joy. By 1972, the Ohio Players were becoming well known, and they followed up Pain with Pleasure and Ecstasy. These albums had eye-catching covers and more funk music that people loved. But as the band's popularity grew, they faced some challenges. In 1974, their drummer, Greg Webster, had to leave due to health problems. He was replaced by James Diamond Williams, a talented drummer with a beautiful falsetto voice. But this wasn't the end of the changes. Junie Morrison, the lead singer, also left to pursue a solo career. The band replaced him with a young keyboard player named Billy Beck. Billy Beck was a perfect fit. He knew the band's music and brought a new energy to the group. With him on board, the Ohio Players began to hit their stride. The band was now firing on all cylinders, creating music that was even more successful than before. Over the next few years, they released 17 top 40 hits. It was very important that we were able to play the kind of music that I wanted to play, which is R&B with a little glare. The group's lineup was solid with Billy Beck, Diamond Williams, Sugarfoot Bonner, Rock Jones, Pee Wee Middlebrooks, and Marvin Pierce. But the real leader of the band was Clarence Satchel. Satchel wasn't just a performer, he was the backbone of the group. He made sure everything ran smoothly. He was the one who designed their costumes, choreographed their dances, and helped lead the band. He was always there to support his bandmates, and they all respected him for it. Sat had a humble spirit and always put the band first. Sadly, despite their success, the Ohio Players' story took a tragic turn. While they had reached the heights of fame, they also faced personal struggles and loss. The band's members had their own battles, and things began to fall apart. There were changes, arguments, and heartache, which ultimately led to the group's decline. Surrounding Love Rollercoaster. This hit by the Ohio Players was released in 1975, and it remains one of their most famous songs. But behind the catchy tune is a story of creativity, rumors, and unforgettable moments. The Ohio Players weren't the kind of group you'd call strict or disciplined. They liked to go with the flow and let the music happen naturally. One of their band members, Sugarfoot Bonner, had a special talent for writing lyrics. He said everything he said started rhyming, and it sometimes made him feel a little crazy. His lyrics were so bold and wild that some had to be toned down to make them radio-friendly. The band also had a unique way of coming up with songs. Another member, nicknamed Satch, would throw out a single word as a title, and they'd build a song around it. Words like fire, roller coaster, and honey became their inspiration. They believed in keeping things simple because simplicity often creates the best art. That's how they came up with the idea for Love Rollercoaster. The song itself was about life's ups and downs. Everyone can relate to the idea of a roller coaster ride with its highs and lows. The band added a little bit of playful grown-up humor by making it sound a bit romantic and exciting. The simple yet catchy lyrics, combined with a funky beat, made it unforgettable. But what really made the song famous wasn't just the music. A strange rumor started spreading. If you listen closely to the track, there's a high-pitched scream in the background. People began saying that a woman had been murdered in the studio while recording the song. Some people believe the scream came from a woman named Esther Cordet, a Playboy model who appeared on the album cover for Honey. One version of the story says Esther got into a fight with someone in the band outside the studio. They say she was murdered, and her scream somehow ended up in the recording. Another version says a studio worker killed her and snuck the scream into the track. Others claim she wasn't murdered at all but had an accident, falling off a roller coaster and screaming as she died. Somehow, the sound ended up on the record. But wait, it gets weirder. One legend says Esther was badly burned during the photo shoot for the Honey album cover. The honey on her body supposedly melted into her skin, leaving her scarred. Angry, she found the studio where the band was recording and screamed into the microphone to ruin their work. It's a wild tale, but even in this version, she survived. Another spooky twist says the scream was from a ghost. The story goes that a prostitute had been murdered near the studio, and her spirit haunted the place. Her ghostly wail is what people heard in the song. Fans played the song over and over, convinced they had found evidence of a crime. The band members found the whole thing amusing. Sugarfoot Boner even joked that if it were true, he'd be in jail by now. The truth? That scream wasn't any crime. It was just one of the band members pretending to scream like someone riding a roller coaster. The rumor, though untrue, helped sell a lot of records. It was just a sound effect added to make the song more exciting. Still, the band didn't rush to shut down the rumors. The mystery only made the song more popular, and fans couldn't stop talking about it. The Ohio Players knew how to grab attention, not just with their music but also with their album covers. Their most famous cover was for the album Honey. It featured a model, Esther Cordick, covered in golden honey. The image was bold and provocative, especially for the time, and it got people talking. Some thought it was creative and exciting, while others called it tasteless or even exploitative. The story behind the honey cover is just as interesting as the picture itself. The model posed on a piece of plexiglass with real honey being poured all over her. Because of the studio lights, the honey became sticky, and she ended up glued to the plexiglass. The team had to use warm water to gently free her. It took hours to clean everything up, but the result was unforgettable. The boldness of their album covers played a big role in the Ohio Players' success. Honey became a huge hit, selling over 1 million copies and earning the band their second platinum album. At the time, they were filling massive venues like Madison Square Garden and the Superdome. They were at the very top of their game, celebrated not just in their hometown of Dayton, Ohio, but across the country. The Ohio Players didn't just represent funk music, they became a symbol of pride for Dayton. The city didn't have the big lights and fame of places like New York or Los Angeles, but the Ohio Players made it feel like a cultural powerhouse. People in Ohio felt connected to the band's success, and their music became an anthem for the state. Though their rise was meteoric, their fall was just as steep. Still, at their peak, the Ohio Players were a force to be reckoned with, blending funky beats with unforgettable visuals and giving fans something to talk about for decades. Time to do the gig. You got to be really up, you got to have energy, you know. And then if somebody says, "Well, here, take a little hit of this, a little hit of that," and before you know it, fans loved them so much that the band was constantly on tour. By the start of the decade, they were playing around 200 shows a year. But behind the music and fame, trouble was brewing. Life on the road brought them two big problems: burnout and drugs. At first, everything seemed fine. The band was making money and enjoying their success. But slowly, things started to change. People stopped caring about rehearsals and the things that once mattered to them. When they returned from tours, it was clear something was wrong. Everyone in the group was using the same drug, cocaine. It all began as a way to keep up with their busy lives. Performing night after night required a lot of energy. Someone suggested trying cocaine to stay awake and keep going. At first, it seemed harmless, but before they knew it, the drug had taken over their lives. Shockingly, some record executives encouraged drug use. They wanted the band to record during the day and perform at night. The executives didn't care about the band's well-being. They only cared about making money. Band member Billy Beck later said, "That's when I realized we were going to have problems." As cocaine became a bigger part of their lives, the band's work ethic began to fall apart. They were living large, enjoying the fame, but trouble wasn't far behind. Billy Beck noticed things were getting bad when he saw bandmates like Satch, Sugarfoot, and others surround Ed by police. At one point, Marvin Pierce, a member of the band, pulled up and said something shocking. "Satch, your cocaine is on it." It was a surprising moment that showed some of the troubles happening behind the music. Thankfully, none of the band members ended up in jail, and they kept performing and touring. Their albums Angel and Contradiction both became big successes, reaching the top 10 charts. Hits like Body Vibes and Hoiku kept their fans dancing. The story behind Hoiku is interesting. The original recording was 25 to 30 minutes long, but they trimmed it down to just the best parts. When it was time to name the song, band member Satch suggested Hoiku, and they went with it. The band never seemed like they were chasing hits. They were just having fun doing what they loved. But even with all their success, trouble came knocking. Marshall Jones, the band's treasurer, got a call from an IRS investigator. The investigator said, "You can avoid me, but you can't evade me." It turned out someone in the band was writing unauthorized checks using undeclared income. They had spent money on penthouses, limousines, and other luxuries they didn't even need. When Marshall confronted Satch, he was upset. He asked, "Why didn't you tell me, man?" Satch tried to calm him down and even offered to pay for his house, but the damage was done. Since Marshall had filed a joint tax return, the IRS came after him too. They threatened to take his house, car, and other assets. Clarence Satchel was the leader of the group. He worked hard to keep the band going and brought home weekly paychecks that supported his family. But not everyone in the band was happy with him. One night, Marshall Jones, one of the members, called Satch's wife and revealed their plan to kick Satch out of the group. It wasn't just a disagreement, they wanted him gone completely. Satch was eventually fired from the band, but the problems didn't end there. The group was hit with massive financial troubles. The IRS came after them for unpaid taxes. It turned out that Mercury Records, their record label, didn't take taxes out of the band's royalties. Each member was held responsible for the money they didn't report. The financial mess destroyed their lives. Satch lost everything: his house, his cars, and his savings. He and his wife had to watch everything they worked for disappear. He cried like a baby when the realization hit. "We never got over that," he said. Losing everything in a moment was a pain he carried for the rest of his life. Other band members also faced hard times. The IRS went after them one by one, and they struggled to recover despite their success. The Ohio Players paid a heavy price for poor financial management and betrayal within their group. You need a lot of weight in order to have a lot of weight. That means you got to have every. The band also faced deep personal losses. Leroy "Sugarfoot" Bonner was the heart and soul of the Ohio Players. His voice had a unique sound, and his guitar skills were second to none. Fans loved him for his energy and charisma on stage. Leroy was the kind of performer who could make you feel the music in your bones. He once said, "This is my life. This is like my breath." Even after decades, Sugar gave everything he had to the music. But the band's journey wasn't easy. Sadly, Leroy passed away in 2013 at the age of 69. He had been battling cancer, a disease that eventually took his life. His death was a huge loss not just for the band but for music lovers everywhere. People who grew up listening to hits like Fire and Love Rollercoaster felt like they had lost a friend. Leroy's voice and presence were a big part of what made the Ohio Players so special. Clarence Satchel was one of the original members of the Ohio Players. He could play multiple instruments, but he was best known for his work as a saxophonist. Clarence was also a talented songwriter, helping create some of the band's biggest hits. In 1995, Clarence died suddenly at the age of 55 from a brain aneurysm. A brain aneurysm is a condition where a blood vessel in the brain bursts, and it often happens without warning. His death was a shock to everyone. Clarence was a creative force in the band, and losing him meant losing a big part of their unique sound. Ralph P. Middlebrooks was the band's trumpeter. His sharp trumpet notes added a bold flavor to the Ohio Players' music. Ralph played with passion and was an important part of the band's signature sound. In 1997, just 2 years after Clarence's death, Ralph also passed away. Like Leroy, Ralph died from cancer. He was 58 years old. Losing Ralph was another tough blow for the band. By then, the Ohio Players were already struggling to stay in the spotlight. Losing yet another member made things even harder. Walter Juni Morrison was a musical genius. He was a keyboardist and arranger for the Ohio Players during the early years of their success. Juni was known for his innovative sound and creative ideas, which helped shape albums like Ecstasy. Even though he left the band before they reached their peak, his contributions laid the foundation for their later hits. In 2017, Juni passed away at the age of 62. Many fans and fellow musicians mourned the loss of Juni, recognizing that his creativity helped define the funk sound. He may not have been in the spotlight, but his influence was felt everywhere. Greg Webster, the original drummer of the Ohio Players, was another vital part of the band. As one of the founding members, he helped set the rhythm and energy that made their music so memorable. Greg stayed with the band during its early days, creating a strong foundation for their later success. In 2022, Greg passed away at the age of 84. He was one of the last surviving members of the original lineup, and his death marked the end of an era for fans of the Ohio Players. It felt like a chapter in music history had closed. Greg's passing reminded us of how fleeting time is, even for legends. The guitarist Robert Ward passed away in 2008, and drummer Cornelius Johnson followed in 2009. Both were instrumental in the band's early sound. Like Junie and Greg, their work helped shape the music that fans still love today. Many of these musicians left the band long before their deaths, but their contributions remained a part of the Ohio Players' story. As each member passed away, it felt like another piece of the group's legacy was slipping away. Despite their massive influence on funk and R&B, the Ohio Players often feel overlooked. Surviving members have spoken publicly about feeling forgotten by the music industry and fans. They were trailblazers in their time, inspiring countless artists, but they don't always get the recognition they deserve. The deaths of Junie, Greg, and other members have made it harder to keep their legacy alive. The surviving bandmates carry the weight of their history while dealing with personal tragedies. It's a difficult balance, especially when the world moves on so quickly. The Ohio Players gave us music that still makes people dance, sing, and feel good. While many of their key members are no longer with us, their contributions live on in the songs we love. Newer generations of musicians can honor them by keeping their music alive.